Y'all thought I was finished?
Hi, and welcome back to Football Barbie, where we talk about anything and everything football here. So, I'm going to keep continuing the trend, and I'm going to talk about the top 2022 quarterbacks for last year. And I would obviously really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, comment. I promise I will reach back to every single person who does comment and everything like that. So let's get it started and talk about the top 2022 quarterbacks for 2022. So obviously, probably more than anyone can guess, if you really do pay attention to football, is your top 2022 quarterback would be Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs. So he managed to play 17 games last year and had a 67.1 accurate rate with 5,250 pass yards. He had 8.1 yards per average with 41 pass touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 358 rushing yards, and 5 fumbles. So 28 out of his 41 touchdown passes went to the tight ends or runners. Not only was Kelsey one of the main targets, but so was Jericho McKinnon. And Juju Smith-Schuster was also another important one. So Mahomes could also run the ball, and it went well when it mattered the most. His 5,614 total combined yards was the single most season yardage in league history. Obviously, he became the MVP last year after his Super Bowl performance. He has the ability to put up 400 yards on a performance on a weekly basis. He may not have broken the NFL single season passing yardage, but he was able to have the current biggest threat to Drew Brees' mark. So number 2 on our list, Jalen Hurts. Now, honestly, I can't say that I'm a little bit surprised, I would say, the fact that Jalen Hurts has managed to do so well last year. Now, like I said before in my previous videos, I wasn't the biggest fan of him for the first 2 years. He was first quarterback in NFL history, though, to pile up 10 rushing touchdowns and 100+ passer ratings in a season. He had a much better year, though, than previously, passing to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith effortlessly. He went from a quarterback who needed to prove he was capable of holding down the gig to establish himself as an MVP candidate as his second full season as a starter. So he did play 15 games last season. He was hurt for 2 of them, so he missed game week 16 and 17 for them. He did have a 66.5 percentage with 3,701 pass yards with 8.0 yards per average. He did have 22 pass touchdowns, but we all obviously know that Jalen Hurts is more of a runner and quarterback. He did manage to only have 6 interceptions, so that's really good. He had 760 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. So he had a total basically of like 35 in total touchdowns. Obviously, like I said, not Patrick Mahomes status, but he did as well as he could. So he did have 9 fumbles as well. So, number 3 on our list, Mr. Joe Burrow from the Cincinnati Bengals. So he had 16 games that he played, 68.3 percentage with 4,475 pass yards. He did have 7.4 yards per average, and then he had 35 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 257 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 6 fumbles. He did actually finish with the PFF highest passing grade out of all of the quarterbacks. He climbed out of a 4-4 start to win his final 8 games while throwing the second most touchdown passes league-wide. He turned his supporting dudes like Samaje Perine, Trenton Irwin, and Trent Taylor into reliable helping hands, with Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon were lost due to injury. So that did definitely hurt him. He may not have the longest throwing arm in the NFL, but when it comes to exploding to yardage and points, he does great. Next on the list, we have Mr. Josh Allen from Buffalo. Now, Josh Allen has good points and bad points to him. So one of his top things that he's known for that are not so good is the fact that he does need to watch his red zone interception. That is not good when you're a quarterback and you're about to be in the red zone and you're about to score a touchdown and you throw an interception. That's quite the problem. When he is at his best, he is a dominant runner and a passer. He did play 16 games last season for 63.3 points per average. He had 4,284 passing yards, 7.6 yards per average, with 35 passing touchdowns, tied with Burrow. He had 14 interceptions, 762 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, and 13 fumbles. So, he is a quarterback with a massive frame, and he does have an incredible throwing arm. He just needs to really pay attention to not actually having a, little red zone interception, because no Buffalo fan wants that. Now, if you're obviously playing Buffalo, you're thrilled if somebody gets an interception when you thought they're about to score a touchdown. Next on our list, Mr. Justin Herbert from the Chargers. Now, you definitely got to talk about him when you talk about top quarterbacks. He did play all 17 games last season. He had 4,739 passing yards, 6.8 yards per average, with 25 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 147 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, he's a little bit more of a thrower than a runner. And he did have 8 fumbles. So he did play with a little rib cartilage fracture, and that's definitely good for him to be able to play like that, but it sucks that, it wasn't so good. His numbers did suffer, though, when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams plus other linemen were ripped from the lineup. So if he managed to keep his star, defense or offensive line that's protecting him, he would have been able to do better, but what are you going to do in a situation? So he wrapped up his third season where he led the NFL in his third season leading the NFL with a 50-plus yard air distance completion, which basically means since 2020. Which basically means if you were going to throw the ball down the field and you have the defense who is trying to block people, that ball could still go much further than you were originally anticipating. So 2023 season, though, may be better considering the fact that they have rookie Quentin Johnston joining Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Next on our list, Mr. Trevor Lawrence with the Jaguars. Now, Trevor Lawrence's first year was okay. He started to really catch his stride, though, last year. He did play all 17 games. He had 4,113 passing yards with 7 yards per average. He had 25 passing touchdowns, so for pretty much still a rookie QB, really only be his second year from Alabama. I'm almost pretty sure he's from Alabama. Sorry. He just did really good. Or Clemson. I'm sorry. I know it's one of them. Like I said, forgive me. I am not the biggest college fan. I semi-pay attention to college. But he's definitely from a really good school. I know it's Alabama or Clemson. So correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to hear. Don't ever feel afraid to correct me. I never ever once say that I'm the best football person out there. And I'm always still learning just like everybody else. Okay. So next, 25 pass touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He had 291 rushing yards with 5 rushing touchdowns and 12 fumbles. So he did become the second quarterback since 1950 for the Jacksonville Jaguars with 10-plus starts. I was amazed to know that. That's wild. That sucks for Jacksonville. Second quarterback since 1950 with 10-plus starts. Also, he doubled his passing touchdowns and half his picks from the previous season. So clearly he is progressing as a quarterback. And for most quarterback, it really does seem like maybe their third season is where they catch their stride. So, Mr. Justin Fields for Chicago, let's see what happens his year. This was, Hurts is technically second full season, but third. So I feel like he was one of his best. Obviously, I'll be curious to see how he grows from there. He completed, Trevor, 76.8% of his passes from weeks 9 to 12. That's really good for somebody who's basically still a rookie. His comeback win against Baltimore might have just been his best performance yet, though, as a pro. Next on our list, Tua Tagovailoa from Miami. Now, he did play 13 games. As we all know, that Tua did get concussions. He, in those 13 games, though, managed to get 3,548 passing yards with 8.9 yards per average. He did have 8 interceptions with 70 rushing touchdowns, 70 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns, and 6 fumbles. He was a PFF 4th ranked passer. He claimed the 2nd highest passer rating, 105.5, in Dolphins history, behind the famous Dan Marino, who had a phenomenal year in 1984 with 108.9 passer rating. So good for Tua. He was able to deliver fire with the Twin Terrors, Waddle and Hill, who both produced over 1,000 yards apiece. If he stays healthy, he does have a good chance with his weapons to do well in the 2023 season. So next on our list, the person who I say I don't understand why he moves from the Rams to the Lions, but obviously that's how football works, Mr. Jared Goff. He had played all 17 games with 4,438 passing yards, 7.6 yards per average with 29 passing touchdowns. He had 7 interceptions for a 1.2% rate. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So he had 73 rushing yards with 0 rushing touchdowns, 7 fumbles. His offense finished 5th in the DVOA, 3rd in total yards, and 5th in points. In a 9-game stretch run, we saw him fling 15 touchdowns and 0 picks. That is extremely credible for somebody to say. Them adding rookie Hendon Hooker, though, could make things a little bit interesting. I'm pretty sure he's still going to be the franchise tag quarterback for the Lions for this year, but, let's pray that everybody stays healthy. Next on our list, GENO Smith from Seattle. Now, he broke Wilson's record for passing yards in a season while talking some smack on Wilson as well. He topped all corners in completions percentages and led the NFC in passing, which I didn't know that, but that's absolutely phenomenal. He's never really had a chance to show his skill until the last season when he led the NFL's completion rate as well in the Seahawks, performing as a top 10 offense. He lost 5 of his 8 last starts, but he still managed to get the Seahawks into the playoffs. So he did play all 17 games with 4,282 passing yards, 7.5 yards per average, with 30 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 366 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. He did still have 8 fumbles. He still does have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but now with adding rookie Jackson Smith-Njigba, he also is going to make it more exciting. So next on the list, the person who technically is the biggest rival to the Eagles would be Mr. Dak Prescott. Now, Dak was on fire during the Vikings game, having an 88% completion rate while posting 40 points on the board. He did get hurt, though, and did have only played 12 games. He had 2,860 passing yards with a 7.3 yards per average, 23 passing touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Interceptions? Not so good. 182 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 4 fumbles. So those intercepts were the biggest concern, but some were due to passes bouncing off targets or routes going wrong, but some were by him throwing a bad ball. So 2 weeks after the Cowboys destroyed the Vikings, the Cowboys were able to put up 52 points on the top 10 Colts defense. So it's like they could be a good team, but they also necessarily at times weren't being a good team. So he did lead the Cowboys to 24 or more points in his 11 starts, but he tossed 11 interceptions in his past 7 appearances. He's going to work on that. Now, I feel like you can't talk about Mr. Tom Brady from the Buccaneers. Tom Brady, obviously, we know, has retired and has apparently bought a percentage of the Las Vegas Raiders. That's exciting. He did play, except I heard Raiders fans, though. I talked to somebody the other day when I was in Denver, was not thrilled that Tom Brady is now a partial owner of the Raiders. He did play all 17 games. He had 4,694 passing yards with a 6.4 yards per average. He had 25 passing touchdowns with 9 interceptions. And he also had 0 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 5 fumbles. So he threw more passes than ever before at 733, but they were boring this year on offense. He logged the 4th highest completion percentage of his career at 66.8%. He had the 6th most passing yards with 4,694, and Tampa did finish 26 in points overdrive. Next on our list, we have Mr. Lamar Jackson, who's still with the Ravens after signing the biggest contract of any quarterback for this year. He did play 12 games because he did get hurt. 2,242 passing yards with 6.9 yards per average. He did have 17 passing touchdowns within that time and 7 interceptions. 764 rushing yards, because we do know Lamar Jackson runs the ball with 3 rushing touchdowns, but 5 fumbles. So he did battle a knee injury. He suffered in early December, but he was able to have a great season before this happened. It will be interesting to see now what happens next year with Odell Beckham Jr. and rookie Zay Flowers joining them. I'm really excited. I thought Odell Beckham Jr. was a great player when he played for the Giants. You know, I actually sat next to him one time, which I thought was funny enough, at Drees, and I didn't want to bug him, but it was like on Super Bowl a couple years ago for 2019. And that was actually pretty cool. He seemed like a really nice person. You know, obviously there's some controversy with him, but I still think that it's going to be interesting to watch him play for the Ravens this year. Next on our list, you can't obviously not talk about Kirk Cousins with the Vikings. The Vikings were on fire last season. So he did play all 17 games. He had 4,547 passing yards with 7.1 yards per average and 29 passing touchdowns. 14 interceptions, though. 97 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 7 fumbles. So when he was on point last season, he formed a dynamic duo with Jefferson. Everybody knows, I've already talked about, Jefferson is one of my top people for that, who accounted for 39% of his total yardage last season. He had some magical moments last season, but he couldn't come away with a postseason victory. It will help adding rookie Jordan Addison to the 2023 season. So we do have next on our list, which everyone's going to be super curious about, is Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who played for Green Bay, but obviously, as we all know, he moved to the Jets. He did play 17 games last season with 3,695 passing yards, 6.8 yards per average with 26 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 94 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. But 8 fumbles, not too bad for that amount of thing. He could never get on the same page last year with receivers, and he finished with a new career low in passing yardage. So if you really just look at that, 3,695 passing yards is his career low. So clearly, Mr. Rodgers has been an MVP before. He might be able to get back to being his former All-Pro self with playing for the Jets. It'll just be interesting to see. He is rejoining his former coach, Nathaniel Hackett, at the Jets. So at the end of the day, I'm beyond curious to see how he's going to play with the Jets. And then we have Mr. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, who played for the 49ers. Now, everybody else was just regular season stats. This is going to be including his, postseason stats, because how can you not? He only played 9 games, and 2 of those were in the postseason. In those 9 games, though, he had 1,374 passing yards, 8.1 yards per average, 13 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 13 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown with 0 fumbles. So the last person picked in the year before's draft ends up doing so well, he became unstoppable until the Eagles shut them down during the playoff. But honestly, I was really worried about the game watching it. And he got hurt, so that's kind of basically what stopped it. He's PFF's 5th ranked passer rating since taking over for the 49ers in Week 14. Purdue passer rating over first in 5 starts of 119 trails only Kurt Warner, who in the Super Bowl era. He worked well with Kittle, which obviously we know is phenomenal, and he operates comfortably under pressure, which is great for somebody who's a rookie quarterback. To operate very well under pressure in the NFL is awesome. he was able to be quite the diamond in the rough. So those are your 2022 quarterbacks. Now, if you pay attention, I will have links to the other videos up here. I will be doing, obviously, the next, the 2023 fantasy football quarterback predictions, because I'll definitely be curious to see how it goes. And please tune in. I will try to be posting a video every Thursday and Sunday around like 11 or noon. I would love for you guys to subscribe, watch, comment, like anything. Just let me know. Ta-ta for now.